Shower the rose petals, shower the rose petals, shower the rose petals, shower the rose petals. Lord of the universe is walking towards us. Lord of the universe is walking towards us. Shower the rose petals, shower the rose petals, shower the rose petals, shower the rose petals. Hello and Sairam everyone, I'm Dana Gillespie and here I am sitting in the library in Puttaparthi. And I was asked to talk about my life. I've had a pretty colourful life, but in order for me to explain about my life with Sai Baba or here in Puttaparthi, I have to actually go back to how I started, which was in 1964. I made my first record in 1964. I was only 15, so you can, if you're good at mathematics, you can work out how old I am. And I knew I was going to be a singer from the age of 11. I started writing songs at 11. And from 64 up until, I can't remember the first year I came here, actually, maybe nearly 40 years ago, I just was singing. I lived a wild life. I hung out with all the top names in the rock and roll business. I've made, well, actually just the other day, my 70th album has come out. So I've not sat back and done nothing. I was the first Mary Magdalene in Jesus Christ Superstar, which was a massive honour to do that in biggest theatre in London. And it must have been nearly 40 years ago, I was on a train going from Zurich to Vienna. That's a 12-hour train journey. And I had nothing to read. And a good Indian friend of mine, she was actually going to publish a book on Sai Baba called Man of Miracles, but publish it in England with bigger print because the Indian version was very small print and you need a magnifying glass when you're older to read it. So she said, I've only got this Indian book, but there's some writing in the side of the book, but you can take it with you and read it, and maybe it's something to interest you in 12 hours. And I remember thinking, this book, I can read this in 2 seconds. I get on the train, open the book, this Man of Miracles by Howard Murfitt. And by the way, this book has changed a lot of people's lives, but it totally revolutionized my life. I open it up, and on page 1, already my palms were sweaty. I knew that something special was in this book, and I read it so slowly, I devoured every word. And by the time I got to Vienna 12 hours later, I'd finished the book, and I thought, right, I'm off to India. And I did something I never do, which is to go to a place when I don't have a gig, a concert. So 3 weeks later, I leapt on a plane, and I had this feeling, even going to get the visa, I could feel Sai Baba pulling me like a fisherman. He'd thrown out the fishing rod, and he was hauling me in, so that when I arrived, I was sure he was going to say to me, hello, I've been waiting for you. You know, you've come. I felt like the chosen one. What an idiot. What an ego. I arrived, didn't know where I was going to sleep, didn't know anything, wandered around like a lunatic, and he ignored me. And not only that, he ignored me for 12 years. I slept in the sheds. I mean, interesting things happen, though. You never forget the friends you stay with in the sheds. And, I mean, I remember one time I'd arrived in Puttaparthi, and somewhere between leaving Whitefield and Puttaparthi, in those days it would take maybe 4 or 5 hours in a bouncing, marvellous Ambassador car. Now everyone wants this modern stuff. Bring me a nice old-fashioned Ambassador. It's sort of what we in Britain call the Rolls-Royce of cars. So I arrived, and I realised that somehow along the line my ticket and passport was missing. And this is the one thing you don't want to lose in India. You could lose your money, you could maybe get that back. You do not want to lose your ticket and passport. And I tried to register at Puttaparthi, which of course is Sai Baba's place. And I got shouted at by the accommodation men, you can't come in here with no passport. They said, go to the police round the corner. And that's one thing you don't want to do either. So I thought, oh, what am I going to do? And I was absolutely distraught because I'm one of those people that never loses anything. And some Austrians behind me, because I go a lot to Austria, and they knew me, and they said, oh, you can come in the shed with us. But so I was all flustered, didn't know where I didn't even have a bedroll. I just plonked down. I had no mosquito netting. Everyone else was organised, had hangings, and all I can think of is, oh my God, I've landed up in this place with no ticket and passport. And in the middle of the night, I'm thinking, right, I'm ready to do Omkar. In those days, and you could go round and you could do the Omkar in the early morning. So I got up thinking it must be 5 o'clock, and I had no torch. I couldn't see anything. I rushed out, and I get to the back where normally people would line up. And instead there was just sort of an old crone covered in what looked like rags, sleeping outside the door. There was nobody there. And I realised I'd arrived at 3 in the morning. Nobody was there. And I thought, what am I going to do? So I plonked myself down next to this elderly lady who was asleep. And I'm sitting there with my hand like this. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I had my head in my hand. And at that moment, out of nowhere, a jasmine flower plopped. I heard an actual plop sound, and it landed in my hand. There was no wind. There was no flowers anywhere. And I looked, I thought, he's gonna help me. This is going to be fine. He's going to save me. So I saved this jasmine flower, go into darshan, of course, which is when Sai Baba comes walking past. And he still wasn't talking or looking at me. He's going to save me. I was absolutely sure of this. He ignored me yet again. And I thought, God, what am I going to do? So then I used to go up in those days. I used to go up in the hills. And I used to walk around because it was the one place you could get cool breezes. And the eagles would be swirling around. And I would sit there on a rock. So I'd gone up there, and somebody had told me, probably erroneously, that if you sing bhajans, the snakes and scorpions won't bite you. So there I am singing bhajans. And while I'm up there at exactly 12 o'clock, which of course in India is boiling hot then, and it's a kind of dead zone, I hear in my head, go down to the village now, go down now. So when you have these inner voice things, as you get older, you do learn to tune into your inner voice. I always say it's so important to trust in your own heart. So I, went all the way down. And as I'm walking past the old accommodation office, a man steps out holding my ticket and passport. And he had gone to try and find me, but because I wasn't registered, I was there illegally, of course, he couldn't find me, and they told him to get lost as well. So we literally met like this, and I said, gosh, thank you. Took the ticket and passport and just checked everything was right. When I looked up to thank him, he had gone. So I was pretty thankful about that. These are little kind of things that occurred before I got the first call to come and sing for the 70th. But I mean, one other quick story before I actually got to sing for Swami's 70th birthday. And I thought, right, I'm going to finally go for a birthday. I've never been to a birthday before, and I'd always heard, don't go, it's so packed with people, you'll get swamped and you won't even find a place in a shed, which sounded pretty terrible to me. And a week before leaving, I got terrible pains in my stomach. I collapsed in the street, was taken off to the local Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, which is the London hospital near where I live in Chelsea. And they took x-rays and they could see some sort of shadow somewhere around here. And they said, oh, you've got to... Nobody said, cut this woman open. They just gave me loads and loads of pills, and I was on a drip. And my private doctor came in to see me and said, what are you doing in a public ward? And, and he used to be Rajmata's doctor as well, so he knew who Swami was. And I said, well, it's all right, Swami will take care of me. He said, you're bonkers, he said. But if something changes, you ring me up and let's see what can happen. So I said, but I'm leaving for India in a few days. So he said, well, gaga, he said. So the day before my flight, I come out of hospital. I'm feeling terrible by this time. I'm dripping with sweat and feeling like death. But I had this great bag of antibiotics, so I thought it would save me. I go home, get ready, come into the airport, London airport, and it's 5 in the morning. The check-in things aren't open, so I'm sitting there. By this time thinking, I'm going to die, but Swami's going to save me. And I saw 30 kind of sadhu men in orange and dripping with, ash and everything, barefooted, and they're all chanting. And I'm thinking, this is the sign, he's going to save me. So I'm sitting there, and the check-in opens, and I could hardly walk at this point. And I go in and I hand my ticket, and the moment I hand the ticket, a voice in my head says very clearly, do not get on this plane. Take the ticket back, go home, call my private doctor. 3 hours later, I'm on the operating slab, and I would have died if I'd have got on the plane because I'd got an abscess. They had to take loads of bits of tubes and things out. It had burst. So if you get septicemia and you're up in the air, you die. They can't land, and they wouldn't have known what it was. So he saved me anyway. But after that, all through this time of my 12 years in what I call the wilderness, I knew I was meant to be there. Within my heart, I knew instantly Swami was all I needed. And even if I was miles away, and I often was, because when I was 15, I was caught in a very bad avalanche in Switzerland. So I was a bit of a champion skier, and I was British junior water ski champion for 4 years. So I was Miss Sporty in my mad youth. And I'm always at the back because I couldn't sit with my leg out. But I kept listening to this great music, and I thought, well, I'm a musician. I should really try and take this music to a wider audience, because this music called bhajans, for those of you that don't know, but I think everyone here certainly knows, it puts you into such a good mood, and the moment you know them and can sing along to them, you feel much better. But a lot of Westerners find it difficult to learn this music, and especially where I came from in London, I go to the oldest Sai centre in London in a place called Russell Square, and in those days they had one bhajan book that had so many mistakes in it that I didn't want to make mistakes, but I think I did probably in my earlier bhajans. But I know now there's a huge difference between Hare, Hari and Hara. But there was nobody to tell me. So and the other thing is, in this one bhajan book, they had a list of instructions. It was like the 10 Commandments, things you cannot do during bhajans. And I look at these things, and one of them was, do not move when the bhajans are going on. You're not meant to sway. Now, if anyone has since seen me when I've sung for Swami, I'm up there and I'm swinging away, because when the music starts, I cannot sit still. And I thought probably everyone would hate me for doing this. But then one time Swami came out on the veranda and he went, look at Dana, she's always going like this. And he did me better than me. So ever since then, I kind of got away with it. I don't think anyone can realize how primitive is not the right word, but simple life was in the early days. And people weren't exposed to television, and they certainly weren't exposed to overweight, red-headed musicians that are going like this on stage. So it was a bit of a shock. Anyway, I thought, well, these bhajans, I'm gonna make them really good and westerny and trancey and groovy, but clearly sung so that a Westerner can learn the words. डरखान में साई समाये ईश्वर प्रेम है
हर दरखान में साई समाये ईश्वर प्रेम
प्रेम ईश्वर है ईश्वर प्रेम है And I had like the second guitarist from Pink Floyd, lovely Tim Rennick. I had great musicians that came in and helped. They're not devotees, but they were quite happy to just play along. And I thought, how can I get this to Swami? Because I was always at the back because of my leg. So I was there for 2 weeks and I put it on a cassette machine and I put it in what we in England called a jiffy bag. It's a sort of padded thing with bubble wrap inside. And I was thinking, I've got 2 weeks to try and hand it to him. But I was always at the back. But from this distance at the back, I could see people were offering things and he was patting them or patting on their heads in a thing. And I was always in the back getting no joy. Well, I was getting joy. I was actually in those days, I remember thinking about this the other day, I was quite content to just see one of his hairs sticking out from behind a pillar or a tiny bit of a flash of orange. I was totally happy. Anyway, the days go by and I've got this package burning a hole in my room and I got one last chance to get it to him and I thought, I'm going to have to do this. So I suddenly found myself on front row. And one thing I must stress is that nobody knew who I was. I always came alone. Nobody knew my name and nobody knew I was a singer. You know, a few English people might have known me, but I didn't know anyone then. And I found myself in the front and I thought, well, I'll have to suffer with my leg. And Swami came out and he came straight to me, stood right in front of me and he said, the singer, hand me the cassette. Now, nobody on this planet, except for Sai Baba, knew that I'd stashed a contraband cassette under my clothes. And that was my sign to go and print. And CDs had just been invented then, so that was my sign. I made my first CD. And from that moment on, my life kind of changed because I'd got my first Bhajan CD. And a few months later, I get a telephone call, sadly not from Sai Baba himself, but from the organisation. They said, would you like to come and sing for the 70th birthday? Would I? What a question. I said, yes. I said, well, I've just done my first Bhajan CD. I was hot to trot for bhajans. And they said, no, Swami wants you to do your Western music. Now, this was really difficult. Blues musicians, I'd never heard blues here, ever. In fact, it was quite difficult to even get a drum kit. There was no real piano. Well, there was in the school, but it was badly out of tune. So I asked my English band, the London Blues Band, and I said, do you want to come and play in India where you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't eat meat, and you won't get paid? Needless to say, half the band said, no way, Jose. But the other half, I had two others, and they said, yeah, well, why not? So I had to take two other guys from Austria. One of them is called Joachim Palden, who I've worked with for years, and he's a phenomenal boogie piano player. And he said, yeah, we'll come. So I arrived with 4 musicians who didn't really know each other. And we arrived, and it's the first time I've been in Puttaparthi, and it was heavingly packed. 70th birthday was more crowd than it is now, actually. And for those of you that have never been into the stadium, it was packed like you cannot believe. However, a couple of days before, I'm in joy because they've stuck a huge rosette there saying artist. So, and I had somebody to sort of wheel me around everywhere. I was able to jump the queue for food. I was suddenly in a front line for Swami's darshan, which hadn't happened to me before. And I had a room on my own. Oh, glory, hallelujah. That was a joy. You know, you had a fan so the mosquitoes didn't come in and attack you. And I'd sort of been walking out. My musicians had no idea what to see. In fact, though I must say, Joachim Palden, my piano player, has since been here a few times, and his twins were born on the 23rd of November, Swami's birthday, which he's not, he says, I'm not a devotee, but he's a natural good man, and that makes a difference. So, a couple of days before the big 70th, and they had posters everywhere, remember, with all kind of huge names from India, all Indian musicians, and at the bottom it said Dana Gillespie, London, and probably everyone was thinking, who on earth is that? And I didn't know which day I was going to be on, but I remember thinking, having seen some Japanese devotees walking around with a mask, I remember thinking, I'm not going round walking with a mask. I'm not going to look ridiculous. And about an hour later, I got hit with the worst flu and dripping nose, and I was completely voiceless. But I couldn't tell my musicians because I didn't want to freak them out. So I just walked around thinking, my God, I'm again pouring with sweat. What am I going to do? So the day of the concert, for some reason, they put me on the 23rd, the final big day, and I was probably the least well-known of anyone there, but Swami knows what he's doing. All the musicians were sort of at the side area, because in the stadium there's this thing called the Shanti Vedika, where Swami would sit, and then the musicians would come out of a huge sun, and we'd step out and do our thing, and they had all the famous cricketers and, famous bigwigs announcing us. And I'm there thinking, I have no voice and I can't even whisper. I literally couldn't say one word. And Swami's sitting over on the side, and I look over to him, and he's quite a distance. And I say to him, Swami, you've got me in this mess. You must help me. And if you're going to help me, just please look at me once. And he just went like that, looked at me, and then looked back. And I thought, oh, I don't know what that means. But suddenly 2 seconds later, somebody I didn't know came up and said, I think I should give you 5 cloves to suck, which I threw them straight in my mouth. And then another guy came up and said, my father's a singer. I think you should just have some vibhuti, his grey ash. So I threw that in my mouth. And then I noticed there was a huge group of children who all made up, ready to go on and do their thing. And they were suddenly cancelled. Timings, they were cancelled, and you could see them running around with mascara everywhere. This has been a very good lesson to me, because you can prepare yourself, you can think you're going to perform, and at the last minute, Swami can change his mind. And it could have happened to me, but it didn't. So I step out onto the stage, and I open my mouth. I cannot say that 100% voice came up. I probably had 60%. Joachim, the piano player, only played real piano. So we had this huge grand piano, God knows how they lifted it up, onto the stage. It had been the day before so out of tune, and Joachim had bought a tuning fork, and it was still out of tune. But by the end of our gig, somehow it was all in tune. But one leg was missing, so they had it on bricks. I mean, it was chaos. Anyway, but those were the glorious old days, because I suppose from where I sit now today, that's 25 years ago, sort of. So we did the gig, and I had a problem, because blues music is often quite racy lyrics. It's music from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you have to remember that all Western music is based on blues. You wouldn't have your rock and roll or your jive and your jazz or anything without blues. And it's music that people used to sing when they had pain. If you were a slave 100 years ago in a sugarcane field or something, you only had your voice. You had music to lift up your soul. So people often think, and it's wrong thoughts, that blues is depressing stuff. Blues is about joy. If you've been cheated on, or your man has walked out, or you're hungry, or you've drunk too much, all basic life stories would go into these songs. And so it's a very real kind of music, which attracted me from the age of 11. And I know that nobody in Puttaparthi had heard the blues before. But Swami, I think, must have wanted me to take a wider message through. So I had a problem, because none of my lyrics were suitable to perform in front of Swami. I mean, absolutely not. The grooves and the style, yes. So I sat down and I wrote, in a sort of Chicago blues. Each city in America has got a certain style of blues. So Chicago blues is ding, 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 ding. It's kind of, we call it Humpty Dumpty Dumpty. It's a very simple style. And I wrote I Sigh for You. I was rather happy that I'd got the word sigh double meaning with Sai Baba. And, you know, I sigh because I do sigh for Swami all the time. Well, I used to. Now he's everywhere, so don't need to sigh. But then I used to do a boogie thing, which had a rather irreligious title called Come On If You're Coming. I changed it to Happy Birthday Baba, because nobody ever sang happy birthday songs like that. I'd never heard it before.
Take my heart and take my soul. Only you can take control. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. Give you my heart. Although everything belongs to you, there's one thing I wanna do. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. I give you my heart. There's so much I wanna say, but oh, you know it all anyway. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. I give you my heart. Ooh, yeah. It's come and gone, but your love just moves on and on. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Baba. I give you my heart. Now here's to the one who never dies. There he is right before our eyes. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. I give you my heart. Happy birthday now. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. Yeah, happy birthday, yeah. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, Baba. Happy birthday, Baba. I give you my heart.
And then I did a slow blues, and I called it Big Daddy Blues, because I used to call him Big Daddy when people who didn't know who Swami was, and it was new in my life, I would say, oh, I'm just going off to see Big Daddy. They probably thought I was going somewhere completely different, but I knew what I was doing. I mean, everything I've always done has been, I consider, in a kind of purity. It may be misconstrued with others, but that's their problem, not mine. So when the show bit was over, and the other thing is, I forgot to mention the important bit, the moment we started with our first chord, Swami, who'd been sitting on a chair, got up and he got onto the jewel, the swing, for those that don't know, and he's sitting happily listening to this blues, swinging away, while 99.9% of the audience were going, what is this dreadful Indian music? We want sitars, we want holy stuff, and you've got all this Indian stuff, this rocking stuff going on. The whole thing was over, and I went to thank the sound people, because actually sound people are probably one of the most important people you can have when you're doing gigs. And it was a sound company called Davis, and I knew them from India. So I'm thanking them. And all my musicians had dumped their drumsticks and bits and bobs and guitar and strings and things onto my stuff, and they'd gone off to have a good time. And I turned round, having talked to the sound people, and the whole stadium was completely empty. Everything was deserted. I was alone with all this stuff to carry. My shoe had just broken. My leg was in agony because I'd been standing for hours. And I remember carrying all their gear, this clobber, through the village, thinking, one moment you can be up there singing for God, and the next moment you can be down there. I might as well have been cleaning the lavatories, actually, cuddling, taking this stuff and in agony with my leg. That was a very good lesson. Equilibrium is very important in life. So I'd been told, don't worry, Swami always sees the artist the next day. You're bound to be seen. So I was all ready for this. My musicians had said, we're not hanging around, and they'd leapt in a taxi, where they'd called for a taxi 3 times. It didn't turn up, and I said, please stay. They didn't listen to me. They leapt in on the 4th taxi. They leapt in, which killed a dog on the way, and they landed up in Bangalore in a room loaded with rats. That'll show them. So the next morning, with my nice artist badge, I'm seated. There's all the artists are lined up in front, so you're in full view of everyone. And I'm sitting there, and Swami comes out and he chooses everyone. Go. He gets to me. He ignores me, picks everyone else. Every single person was chosen to go in except for me. And every time I tell this story, I almost can taste the blood in my mouth, because I had to chew on my gums to not cry. You know, Swami, what had I done? Had I sung the wrong music? You wanted Western music. What had gone wrong? I was absolutely covered with torment and embarrassment, because suddenly I'm on my own sitting out there and they've all gone. And my mother had always taught me, you must be gracious in life, even when something has gone wrong. Smile and try and look as if you don't care. So I chewed on my gums, stood up, held my head up high, walked back to my room and fell upon my pillow and howled. I howled, Swami, how could you do this? And the next day, of course, I was leaving. Swami didn't look at me again then either. That didn't matter. I'd done what I thought was my best, but I was aware that most of the Indians hated my music. And some of the students have since come up to me and they said, well, now they're all married and some of them have got children, but they said, you know, we hated the music too, or we didn't understand it. The Westerners all said, wow, thank you, Swami. But it's just because blues had never come to this country. And so that was pretty amazing. That was the 70th. And from that moment on, a few months later, I came back. I think it was Shivaratri. Swami called me in, I think basically just to satisfy my desire to see what the room was like. When you've seen people going in all the time, I just want, what's in there, Swami? Now I know that interview is far better than interview. But, I just wanted to see for myself. So I can't even remember what happened in that interview, probably not very much. I've sort of lost count on the number of interviews. And anyway, when there have been ones of great importance, Swami used to say, if he gives you something or says something, don't go out and tom-tom it all over the world, because it loses its importance. If you were given something, he'd always say, cover it up, when you leave the interview room, because otherwise people are going to either feel jealous or want something as well. So, as I said, I've kind of lost track through the years of things that he's said to me, but I do remember one very important thing. He once said, do you want to ask me a question? And you know how people in the old days used to go in and see Swami, and they had great shopping lists of, should I sell my business? Can you get a wife for my son? When's my daughter getting married? All of this trivial stuff. I never had a question, because when I was there sitting in front of him I just felt I didn't have any questions. So I'm in there on my own. And by the way, this was at a time when they used to say, he doesn't take people in on their own, certainly not women. He did. I went in there quite a few times and it didn't bother him. In fact, he always used to call me Sir, so that was quite reassuring. Because I've always felt slightly, not exactly a hormonal imbalance, but I live in a man's world. I've worked in a man's world in the 60s, and you get strong. You've got to toughen up. So he said, do you want to ask me a question? And I couldn't think of a single thing that was intelligent. So I just said, Swami, well, what's the meaning of this life? And he just said 5 words, and I repeat these 5 words always. He said, play the game, be happy. And it's so simple. That's all we need to do. And we are like his chess pieces. He moves us around. Surrender is the most important thing. I always remember Rajmata said to me when I first came here, she said to me, if you learn surrender, that's the only thing you need to know. Everything else falls in place. So a few years go by. Oh yeah, well then the next time I get asked to sing is in the Purna Chandra Hall. And I'm there on my own. And Swami says, I think it might have been 71st birthday. So I'm there on my own and Swami says, now you sing these 6 songs. And he says, don't worry, I will be there, because my worry is I was singing with backing tracks. And I'd never heard people in Puttaparthi sing with backing tracks. They always came with live musicians. And Swami used to sometimes get up and go on what I call little walkabout. If you're with live musicians, you say to them, come on, boys, keep playing till he comes back. But with a backing track, you can't alter the running order and you can't change anything. You're stuck. So I had these 6 songs that were, and Swami said, don't worry, I will be there. And he said, don't worry, you'll get marvelous equipment. You'll have the best monitor, the best microphone and nice speakers. And some of you will know what's coming next. So the day of the concert in the Purna Chandra Hall, because I'm quite theatrical, I thought I could step out with my microphone and I could walk over there and I could walk over there and I could sing and, because I'd noticed that a lot of the Indian performers usually look terrified and they never smile and they never talk in between the songs and they don't command the stage, which of course I'm used to doing. So I get out with the microphone and it's so old and the cable is so short, I couldn't move anywhere. The monitor was about that size at my feet and I was stuck. No moving about, I was there frozen. And I had another problem, is through the years I'd observed everyone used to offer him a rose. Well, in the Purna Chandra Hall, there's a sort of a semicircle thing, a thing where the VIP sit with Swami in the middle, but it's down below. And as a woman, you can't possibly go among the men to give something to Swami. So how could I give him a rose? And anyway, with my bad knee, on a stage, I never could get down on my knees because Swami liked people to look elegant. And if I got down on my knees, I'd have looked like an elephant trying to get up. It's not a nice sight. So this is where I devised the idea. I devised the idea to shower him with rose petals. I had a big bag of rose petals. I come out onto the stage, probably looking horror at the microphone, but then I just threw them all over him. And I'd learnt to do that because I think it was a couple of years earlier. I'd been there on Ladies' Day. And for some reason, 4 ladies were chosen to give Swami some flowers. And they were wrapped in plastic. They looked cheap and nasty and horrible, and they were all drooping. And one of the ladies was a famous actress, Hollywood actress, I shouldn't say her name, and 2 other bigwigs from here in the ashram. Why they picked me, I don't know. And I'm given these flowers and I'm thinking, I can't give these to Swami. They look awful. And I was told, no, you must. There's an order. And I said to the girl next to me, I'm not giving these to Swami. I'm embarrassed. She said, you'll be kicked out of the ashram. I said, I don't care. I am not doing this. So the first woman, the famous one, gets up and hands the thing to Swami and he just throws them on the floor. He doesn't even look at them. He's got a really long face. Next woman gets up, throws them. It happens to the third woman. And all the time I'm thinking, I am not offering anything to Swami that he throws them on the floor. So there was a couple of roses in this awful plastic thing. I wouldn't give plastic to Swami anyway. Rip the petals off, leave this plastic thing behind, go up. And he'd had a long face during the whole time. Throw rose petals over him and he smiles. So that's how I started with this rose petal thing. So I pour the rose petals down and my worry about him moving and going on walkabout. Didn't happen. He stayed there. I could see down below his eyes were burning bright like a tiger. I could see him looking at me because it's all dark down there. I've always felt that he doesn't want me to sing to him. He wants me to sing for him. And anyway, Swami once said, the best way to see the Lord is to see him in everyone. So I look at God when I look at the audience. So I was a bit worried about this concert with my backing tracks for one reason alone. I'd taken one bhajan, which was Prasanna Ho, Sathya Sai Ram, put a disco beat on it, which I thought, I'm going to be landed in such trouble again.
Prasanna Ho, Prasanna Ho, Prasanna Ho, Sathya Sai Ram. Prasanna Ho, Prasanna Ho, Prasanna Ho, Sathya Sai Ram. Kripa karo, Prabhu, Kripa karo, Prabhu, Kripa karo, Sathya Sai Ram. Kripa karo, Prabhu, Kripa karo, Prabhu, Kripa karo, Sathya Sai Ram. Daya karo, Baba, Daya karo, Baba, Daya karo, Sathya Sai Ram. Daya karo, Baba, Daya karo, Baba, Daya karo, Sathya Sai Ram. Prasanna Ho, Prasanna Ho, Prasanna Ho, Prasanna Ho, Sathya Sai Ram.
And can you believe it that at the end of the concert, there were students or people in white, probably not students, actually, they were up and dancing to Prasanna Ho. I've now seen them dance all over Russia where I've sung. They get up and dance because this music is joyful. And then at the end of the concert, he came up and he gave me this little thing, which is here. This was the first thing he ever gave me. Since then, actually, he's decked me out like a Christmas tree. It always makes me laugh. I mean, I'm a blues singer, but he's got a sense of humor as well. So he put this over my head, and I go back to the room, thankful that I've done I hope a good job. And the next day, Anil Kumar, who everyone here would know is, Swami would translate and he would speak in English. Anil Kumar, who's never spoken to me before or really since. And anyway, when he does announce my name, he always calls me Gillespie rather than Gillespie. But that doesn't matter. He came up to me and he said, I was sitting on the floor next to Swami last night and he said, when you were singing, he said, look at Dana. She's not just singing, she's experiencing the bliss, he said. And then Anil Kumar trotted off. And I walked to my...
What Swami told him.
Yeah. So the Swami had said, look at Dana, she's experiencing the bliss. And I'm thinking, bliss? This is not so. When I have sung for Swami, it is not a state of bliss. It is, I'm a professional. So usually I'm thinking, what's the next verse? Is my makeup dripping? Is my sari still on? That's always a concern. Or, what's happening? Because I'm thinking about my work. But when I have sung the songs, when I practice songs, especially a song that I wrote for him called Guardian Blue Angel, and now when I'd be staying in Rajmata's house, where the acoustics are amazing, I used to practice in there, and I'd start this song, and I would be in floods of tears. Not one note would come out of my mouth.
Oh, guardian blue angel, spread your wings over this weary child, so safe and sound. I'm tired of running wild. There's been so many times when you've saved me from the lion's jaw.
So I know that Swami would switch me off. I had no bliss because I have a job to do. He wants me to sing for him. So I don't know why he said that, but yet again, another sense of humour. So I don't have bliss when I've sung for him. I'm thinking how I can do the best job for him. And I still do that now. I mean, it's lovely to sing in the SaiOrgAustralia hall when you've got your bare feet and you're walking across the marble. Even now, I like to walk all around, even over to the men's side. Some of them look a bit worried and nervous, but that's their problem, because I don't see any difference between men and women. Everything's the same to me. I see life in notes, musical notes. I think it might be a form of what we in England call Asperger's disease. You're not quite normal, but I've always heard music going on the whole time. And I'm happy, so that's how I do things.
Well, it's bliss for everyone who listens to you.
This next song is written by Nirmal Udas, who's the brother of Pankaj Udas. And again, some of my favorite Sufi writers are where I've taken the bits that are spoken, like Chisti, Hafiz, Hujwiri, and Rabia. And this song came about from the times when I used to sit outside nearly 20 years ago, often crying, sometimes tears of joy, but sometimes yearning tears at night, wishing that I was in here. And it wasn't until I'd finished writing the words that I realized the title had a double meaning, because it's called Silently Sighing. The stars are shining, all eyes are closed in sleep. Each lover is now alone with his beloved, and so here too am I. For in your hands I stand alone, alone with you. Silently sighing underneath the moonlight, softly crying, what am I to do? Silently sighing, wondering if this night you will make my dream come true. To bless me with love so I may adore you. Bless me to do what's right and be true. Give me a heart so I can give it back to you. Silently sighing underneath the moonlight, slowly dying of love for you. Then a voice whispered, light the lamp of love in the inner chamber of your being. For there you will hear the finest of music, and you will meet the beloved. How many tears make up an ocean? Oh, let me drown in this sea of love. Deep in my heart, this burning emotion shines as bright as the stars shine above. The flame within, now it won't rest easy. Only your love can set me free. So bless me with love so I may adore you. Bless me to do what's right and be true. Give me a heart so I can give it back to you. Silently sighing underneath the moonlight, slowly dying of love for you. The heart of a lover is the furnace of the fire of love, and whatever impure enters, his heart is burnt to ashes, for there is no fire stronger than the fire of love. So many nights have passed without sleeping, till the dawn comes whispering your name. Long are the days that leave me weeping. I know I've only myself to blame. I turn to you for my one reality. Only your love can set me free. So bless me with love so I may adore you. Bless me to do what's right and be true. Give me a heart so I can give it back to you. Silently sighing underneath the moonlight, slowly dying of love for you. Don't regret your midnight sighs, for they are the mirror of the heart, radiant in the dawn. For love is the polisher of the mirror of the heart. Open my heart like a lotus flower. Take me, shape me, and make me your own. Hear my prayer in the midnight hour. Let me know I'm never alone. Turn my life into sweet victory. Only your love can set me free. So bless me with love so I may adore you. Bless me to do what's right and be true. Give me a heart so I can give it back to you. Silently sighing underneath the moonlight, slowly dying of love for you. So bless me with love so I may adore you. Bless me to do what's right and be true. Give me a heart so I can give it back to you. Silently sighing underneath the moonlight, slowly dying of love for you. Silently sighing underneath the moonlight, slowly dying of love.